Bismillah, alhamdulillah, salatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. I forgot to bring the book of hadith, so today we'll only do the tafsir session. Last class we basically concluded explanation of Surah Al-Fatiha. But I felt there was a couple of more points I'd like to mention before we go into Surah Al-Baqarah. One of them is that if you notice the last verse, صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. أنعمت عليهم means the ones whom you have blessed. Talking in the first person. غير المغضوب عليهم, not the ones who have, upon whom the wrath has befallen. This is the actual more accurate translation. As you can see that the people, the righteous people, we mentioned clearly that Allah has blessed them. While the verses, when it comes to those people who have incurred Allah's wrath, it is just mentioned in the past participle tense that the wrath has befallen upon them. And this is out of respect for Allah Azza wa Jal, and also to indicate that what happened to them only happened because of their own doing, not because Allah has been unjust to them in any way. While the people who have been blessed, that is something that is a favor from Allah Azza wa Jal. فَمَنْ وَجَدَ خَيْرًا فَلْيَحْمَدِ اللَّهِ. According to the hadith, whoever finds goodness in his deeds, he should thank Allah for that. And that is why we say, أَنْعَمْتَ عَلَيْهِمْ. You have blessed them that they are on the straight path. While those who have gone astray, they have gone astray because of their own doing, and they are the ones who have incurred the wrath, not that you have been unfair to them in any way. And those are the ones who have identified and realized the right way and have deliberately rejected it. These are maghdubi alayhim. And they are at a worse level and a worse status compared to those who have gone astray out of ignorance, for instance, or out of the influence of their environment, or out of wrong teachings. Those are ad-dallin. But those who deliberately avoid the straight path despite knowing it, they are more deserving of the wrath than the other class of people who have gone astray. You follow? But both of them are not on the straight path. You can see that those who have deliberately gone astray, their punishment is mentioned clearly, that they have incurred Allah's wrath. While the other ones, the punishment is not mentioned. It is just mentioned that they have gone astray, dallin. You follow? You see the difference? And that, some scholars say this is because some of them deserve punishment, and there might be also a portion of them who have gone astray because they never knew any better. They just lived all their lives, and they have never been exposed to the right teachings. They were looking for you find some people like this. It's not too many people, but there are people who have just never been in touch with the truth, lived in maybe in very remote places, or at times where there was no prevalence of knowledge, so they did not realize Allah's messages. Or some people who were looking and looking and looking, but they never came across what leads them to Islam, or to knowing Allah's final message. So those people, of course, Allah will deal with them according to their intention and their efforts, and He may test them in the hereafter. There's many ahadith that talk about their destiny. But such people, for us in dunya, they are not on the straight path. They have deviated. The cause behind their deviation, if they have an excuse or not, they don't have an excuse, that is left up to Allah Azza wa Jal to deal with according to what Allah knows of them, and that is why the dallin, there is no mentioning of any punishment, and that is one of the very delicate, miraculous things. You know, these fine nuances and fine connections between every word and the other. This is where the glorious nature of the Quran shows up, that every word is in its proper place and giving the right meaning, avoiding all the wrong meanings, and it's beautifully coherent with each other. Even we mentioned many things, but there's lots still to mention, but let me mention a couple more here. If you look at Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, why is he Allah? Why does he deserve to be worshipped and adored? Because this is the meaning of Allah, the one who deserves to be adored, worshipped and obeyed and sought after for any help. This is the meaning of Allah. Why is that? Because he is Rabbil Alameen. The link between Allah and Rabbil Alameen, because he is the one, the cherisher, the provider, the creator, the sovereign, the one who looks after his creation. So that is Rabbil Alameen. He teaches, guides. All this falls under Rabbil Alameen. That is why he deserves to be Allah, deserves to be worshipped and obeyed and so on. You follow? And that's why you see the link between Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. And then you see the link between Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. What is evidence that he is Ar-Rahman? That he is Ar-Rahim. That his mercy has been physically and that has been delivered to his creation in reality. It has taken place in reality. This is the meaning of Ar-Rahim. Rahim talks about the mercy being delivered to the creation. Ar-Rahman talks about his quality of mercy. How would you know that he is Rahman? Because he is Ar-Rahim. You follow that? Okay. And then Maliki Yawmiddin. There's also a link between the two. Malik or Malik, he is the king, the sovereign. How do we know that that he is a king and a sovereign? Because he has set Yawmiddin. There's a day for judgment, just like we talked in Jum'ah. Without the day of judgment, the sovereignty and kingdomship, control, dominion will be imperfect. And not complete. You follow? So all these links are important also to remember. And then of course you conclude the Fatiha by saying, after you say Walad Dallin, you say Ameen, which is not part of the verse, not part of the Fatiha, but it's a dua, of course. So that's why you say Ameen, which means, Oh Allah, accept our dua. Oh Allah, accept our dua. And it is mentioned in the hadith that whomever his Ameen coincides and conforms with the Ameen that is uttered by the angels, and the angels are known to utter Ameen whenever the believers are praying and saying Ameen, they also say Ameen. The angels, Allah has set them to help the believers in their path. They make istighfar for them. وَيَسْتَغْفِرُونَ لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. Sometimes we make a sin and we are so absent-minded and so much indulged in the sin that we forget even to make istighfar for ourselves. But there are angels making istighfar for you. That's why this is one of the meanings of the verse, لَهُ مُعَقِّبَاتٌ مِنْ بَيْنِ يَدَيْهِ وَمِنْ خَلْفِهِ يَحْفَظُونَهُ مِنْ أَمْرِ اللَّهِ. There are angels. Mu'aqibat means they look after, they do an action that follows your action. They do an action that follows your action. In Arabic, aqib means the heel, for instance, because it comes after, it's a very rear part of you. So lahum mu'aqibat, those angels, a person performs a sin and they are making istighfar, yahfazunahu min amrillah. Why? To protect me and you from Allah's punishment. You follow? So that is all help for the believers. So they're saying Ameen as well. And whoever his Ameen coincides with their Ameen, meaning that he says it appropriately right after the Iman, and then he says it sincerely, knowing what he is saying, just like the angels. The angels, of course, are saying it sincerely. Then غُفِرَ لَهُ, Allah would forgive them. Now, inshallah, we'll start Surah Al-Baqarah. We'll just give a quick introduction, since we do not have a hadith session. So we've only gone for 8 minutes and 40 seconds. So maybe you go for 3 or 4 minutes here. Surah Al-Baqarah, by consensus, it is a Madani surah. It is a Medinan surah. It was revealed in Medina. It was actually the first surah to begin to be revealed in Medina. But at the same time, it is the last surah to be concluded in Medina. So, over how long a period did Surah Al-Baqarah, was it revealed? Over how long a period? How many years? 10 years, right? And Prophet ﷺ lived in Medina how many years, guys? 10 years, right? He lived 13 years in Mecca and 10 years in Medina. So it's the start of revelation at the very beginning, and pieces and paragraph, and sometimes one verse would be revealed until it was concluded just a few days before the death of Prophet ﷺ. And the last verse revealed in the Quran, وَاتَّقُوا يَوْمًا تُرْجَعُونَ فِيهِ إِلَى اللَّهِ. Subhanallah. Like talking about the Yawm al-Akhir. That guard yourself from a day you will be returned to Allah. ثُمَّ تُوَفَّى كُلُّ نَفْسٍ مَا كَسَبَتْ, where every soul will receive its full reckoning واتقوا يوما ترجعون فيه ثم توفى كل نفس ما كسبت وهم لا يظلمون, and nobody will be wronged, and nobody will be wronged. That was the last verse revealed. And this verse, it is mentioned that it is revealed during the last Hajj of the Prophet ﷺ. He did the Hajj and then he went home, and then shortly after that he passed away. And although it was revealed during Hajj in Mina, so around Mecca, still it is called a Medinan verse, because the classification of Medinan or Meccan surah depends on before Hijrah or after Hijrah. So some scholars will take that literally, say if it's after Hijrah, it's Medinan, regardless of the location. And some of them would say, no, we regard the location. So some of them scholars will say, oh, it's a whole Medinan surah except this one verse. That's how accurate they are. This one verse is Meccan. It's important sometimes to know that as well. Like for instance, let me mention an example. In Surah Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it's all Meccan, it's all Medinan, except one verse that was revealed on the way to Medina. One verse was revealed on the way to Medina, and this is the verse. وَكَأَيٍّ مِّن قَرْيَةٍ هِيَ أَشَدُّ قُوَّةً مِّن قَرْيَتِكَ. We just recited it this morning. وَكَأَيٍّ مِّن قَرْيَةٍ هِيَ أَشَدُّ قُوَّةً مِّن قَرْيَتِكَ الَّتِي أَخْرَجَتْكَ أَهْلَكْنَاهُمْ فَلَا نَاصِرَ لَهُمْ. Allah is telling Prophet ﷺ, as they drove him out of Mecca, that there have been many towns and villages that were stronger than your village, stronger than Quraysh and Mecca, that who have expelled you. أهلكناهم, I have destroyed before. فلا ناصر لهم, and no one could provide them with help. And that was like a consolement and comfort to Prophet ﷺ that he will be victorious over them. Just give it some more time now. So it is I think it's 286 verses. Is it 286? Can you confirm? 286. 286 verses now. 286, yeah. Let me, before we go into the surah, and of course the basmala we talked about in detail, Bismillah ar-Rahman we talked about in detail. Today I will just mention to you the broad topics that are mentioned in Surah Al-Baqarah. This is very important because it's a long surah, to know the main topics, because those topics come in the form of chunks of ayat or in paragraphs, so you have to know them in order. Initially, the verses talk about the articles of faith. الذين يقيمون الصلاة ومما رزقناهم والذين يؤمنون بما أنزل إليك وما أنزل من قبلك وبالآخرة هم يوقنون. So it talks about the articles of faith and the classification of people based upon their belief in the articles of faith. It then talks about the believers, أولئك على هدى من ربهم وأولئك هم المفلحون. Then talks about the kuffar, إن الذين كفروا سواء عليهم أنذرتهم. Then talks about the munafiqeen, ومن الناس من يقول آمنا بالله واليوم الآخر وهم بمؤمنين. So it classifies the people into three different groups: the believers, the disbelievers, and the hypocrites. And then it calls on all humanity to worship Allah and believe in Him. يا أيها الناس اعبدوا ربكم الذي خلقكم والذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون. So it goes on. And then it gives them the rationale why they have to worship Allah. الذي جعل لكم الأرض فراشا والسماء بناء وأنزل من السماء ماء and then talks about the Quran as well, that it's miraculous. وإن كنتم في ريب مما نزلنا على عبدنا. That's all. These are all the reasons why you should follow, why you should worship Allah, especially according to the Quran. Worship Allah, and then talks about how do we worship Allah, the Quran. وإن كنتم في ريب. If you are in doubt about this Quran, that this is the way to worship Allah, then bring the likes of it. Right? And then after that it started talking about, and it talked about the reward of those people who actually follow this commandment, when it talked about the Jannah, وأتوا فيها كلما رزقوا منها من ثمرة رزقا قالوا هذا الذي رزقنا من قبل, and so on. And then it talked about the beginning of creation of Adam, right after that, right? And the dialogue that happened between the angels and Allah Azza wa Jal upon the creation of Adam, and the fact that Adam was placed as a ruler and vicegerent on earth, and his story with the shaitan. This comes later, after this. And then it talks about, in a long section, talks about what happened with Bani Israel, the Israelites, as a lesson for us, that they were given the message and how they dealt with the message if they obeyed or disobeyed, and the kind of punishment that befell them when they disobeyed, and how Allah repented and accepted the repentance, and they went back and forth and back and forth. And then after showing that their rebellion against God multiple times, to show the justification that they no longer deserve to be the holders of the covenant of Allah Azza wa Jal, Allah then talked about switching the Qibla. You see the Qibla, the verses that talk about switching the Qibla, and Ibrahim, وَإِذْ يَرْفَعُ إِبْرَاهِيمُ الْقَوَاعِدَ مِنَ الْبَيْتِ قَدْ نَرَى تَقَلُّبَ وَجْهِكَ فِي السَّمَاءِ فَلَنُوَلِّيَنَّكَ قِبْلَةً تَرْضَاهَا, talking about switching the Qibla from Bayt al-Maqdis, which is the center of Judaism, right, and the Israelites, to Mecca, in preparation to talking about that this ummah is now the holders of the banner of monotheism, and they are the forerunners that will lead humanity back to Allah Azza wa Jal after this covenant was taken away from the Jews. And that's actually mentioned in their own books, that the covenant will be taken from them and given to a nation that will actually bring forth its fruits. You can read in the Bible, you see that. And then so it talks about Ibrahim and Ismail, because now it's all shifted to Arabia and to Mecca area. And then it talks about this ummah, that for it to be deserving of Allah's blessing and to be the leaders of humanity, then they have to follow Allah's commandments. So it talks about the various commandments that are legislated for this ummah. Then you see the verses talking about the salah, talking about the siyam, talking about the hajj, talking about the sadaqah. There's many verses talk about the sadaqah at the end of Surah Al-Baqarah. There's many verses talk about the riba, avoiding riba, and you can't be the ummah, the chosen ummah, just by giving the label and that's it. No, there's actions that you have to take, and here are the rules that you have to follow, and that is a major part of Surah Al-Baqarah. All these rules that have to be followed by this ummah, and even talking about how we should deal with each other, our social interaction, talking about marriage and divorce, even the most delicate and delicate social interactions within the house and between the man and his wife are mentioned here, divorce and so on. Wal-ila, if somebody has an argument with his wife, Allah has rules that govern all this, and iddah is all talked about here, even the iddah, the waiting period after divorce, it's all mentioned in Surah Al-Baqarah. And then something very important that's mentioned repeatedly in Surah Al-Baqarah, and that we come back to why it's called Surah Al-Baqarah, that Allah talks repeatedly in the surah, multiple areas, about bringing the dead back to life. And He gives actual physical examples of people. I'm sorry I took longer because I wanted just to finish the topics of Surah Al-Baqarah. We're almost done actually. Mentioned multiple examples of people coming back to life in this life, so that nobody has any shred of doubt about resurrection in the hereafter. Give me examples from Surah Al-Baqarah. Give me one example from Surah Al-Baqarah where Allah talked about somebody who was dead and He brought him back to life. Go ahead, Munir. You know the answer. You know one answer at least. Huh? لا in Surah Al-Baqarah. In Surah Al-Baqarah. Why is it called Surah Al-Baqarah?
Why called Surah Al-Baqarah? Because of the cow.
Yes, what did they do with the cow? فَقُلْنَا ضْرِبُوهُ بِبَعْضِهَا. Right? Allah told them when there was somebody who killed somebody and they didn't know who killed him, and Allah wanted to bring this person back to life to say who killed him, who slayed him. That the story. Did you know that this was a story? No. So this is why it's called Surah Al-Baqarah, because that's the first story of bringing somebody back to life mentioned Surah Al-Baqarah. Two people had an argument. One of them killed the other. The people didn't know who killed him, so there was a big dispute. So they went to Musa alayhi salam, and then he said to them, so they told him, please ask Allah who killed this man. So he gave them an answer very far away from what they were asking. He says, Inna Allah ya'murukum an tadhbahu baqarah. Go and slaughter a cow. Of course, because and this shows that if Allah commands us to do something, even if we don't realize what's the connection between this man who is dead and slaughtering a cow, just listen and obey. You will know the answer at the very end, right? So they kept on arguing. What kind of cow? What kind of color? And they made it so difficult. Eventually, فذبحوها وما كادوا يفعلون. They almost wouldn't slaughter it. فذبحوها وما كادوا يفعلون. Maybe they almost would not fulfill the commandment. And then فقلنا اضربوه ببعضها. Take a piece of flesh from this cow and hit like on the face or the body of the dead person with this cow. And this is because Allah wants to show that use a dead piece of meat against a dead piece of meat and Allah will bring life from that. So subhanallah. So if, he came back and he said, this man killed me, and then he died again. But the moral of the story is that Allah brings people back to life, and this will result in judgment, because once they knew this is the killer, now they'll take him, and the punishment was death penalty as well. So it shows the importance of, anyhow, I think I took too long. We'll stop here, and remind me we'll continue talking about the topics of Surah Al-Baqarah.